So I managed to get a hold of the owner, and he has decided to leave these mouldings on, which I'm pretty happy about. It didn't really take much convincing at all. He was just like, yeah, no, you're probably right. And it is something that came out on the GTs that set them apart from the standard Cortinas. So supposedly it's a 66 too. My business partner told me it was a 64, but that's not right. And supposedly these things were actually made in Australia too, obviously from a English design. Reason being, I've been told, is so that they could compete in Bathurst, which is Australia's biggest motor race. And if they had to make a certain amount of vehicles in Australia to enable them to actually compete in Bathurst, and the Cortina 500 GT won Bathurst in 65. I'm pretty sure. This is what I just had a look at a video. It was Cortina versus the Mini, which we've actually got the two in the workshop at the moment. So we've got the Mini in here and the Cortina out there. So pretty cool to be working on these old cars. So I started getting some filler in. I sanded the entire, started to get some filler into this Cortina. I sanded the entire side down with 180 grit on the orbital, and just put some filler in. It started going hard on me as I was still putting it in, so that's a bit ugly, but be able to sand it out, no big deal. I'll just be hitting them with 80 grit to start off with, and then finish it all off with 180 grit. So I've started sanding some of those bits of body filler out. These two panels here have been done in acrylic. I could tell as soon as I looked at them there was no orange peel in them, or a very fine amount anyway. But the problem we come across is spots like this where it just wants to rip away and it's not feathering out very well. So I've done my best, but you're just sometimes chasing your tail with these repairs. So the best thing to do is just to get some 2-pack on it, get the worst of it, and there is still a little bit of a funny spot there. Get the worst of it done, prime it up with some 2-pack. Might be able to just put a bit of fine fill in the sections that need it, and then a bit of 1K. Same with this bit here. It's not perfect, but I've finished it all off with 180 grit, so it's nice and fine. Hopefully that will minimise any chance of shrink back later on. Apart from that, it's going okay. I found something out today. Not sure if you can quite see this here, but there's been a lead repair where someone's done some lead loading in the past, and there was a bit of a crack here in the paint. So I decided to get my mini grinder and grind it right back, because it's the only real way to fix a crack properly, to take it right back. And then I just thought I'd keep it contained to that area and just put a bit of filler over it to build back up where there's probably about 10 layers of paint there. But I found out that body filler doesn't stick to lead. So as soon as I'd start blocking it, it would just start ripping up here. And I didn't quite realise that it was lead until I got my fingernail, and I was actually able to create indentations in the metal there. So unfortunately I had to just make this big feathered out area. Same thing, I may need to put a little bit of filler in there once it's 2-pack primed. There's still a fair bit of work to be done on this thing. It's not in the best way, but hey, I'm not here to save the world, I'm just here to make it look a little bit better. Sure, this thing will come up pretty good when it's done. Decided I'll be using Concept No Mix base coat and give the High Solids Clear another crack. Day 3 and making pretty good progress. Hopefully I'll be able to get most of the repairs done today and have it ready for primer first thing tomorrow morning. So I've just moved around and got this side sorted out. Just still got to rub some of these bits of filler out. Got the bonnet just about sorted. 2 little bits of filler, just one last bit here and here, and that'll be ready for primer. We ended up drilling out these new holes for the pins that he's got a different style pin there that he's putting in, and just doing some filler repairs. I put fiberglass in his old holes first, not just straight through with bog, because bog will crack out, whereas fiberglass seems to last a bit longer. A little bit more fiberglassing around here. I'll be just going over all the edges, and yeah. Then I've got the boot to do. So as I grabbed that boot lid and put it up onto the stand, I actually realised that there was loads and loads of rust on the inside of it. So I pulled that rubber off, gave it a really good grind back, and most of it was just surface rust. However, there was still a couple of little bits of pitted rust that I was able to just grind right back. And then as you'll see here, I've got some Pour 15. This is the 2-pack version, so it's called hard nose, so it's got hardener in it. And this is extremely tough stuff. I mean, they say that you can paint directly over rust. So you clean the worst of it off and then go straight over. But I still would like to do the prep work as good as possible. I guess it's only going to make it last that little bit longer. And I just decided to brush it on. I decided it was just going to be quicker and easier. Plus I didn't have a booth and I wouldn't have to clean a spray gun out. And it's all getting 2-pack primed over the top, just with my normal 2-pack high build primer, which is the concept brand I'll be using later on. Thursday morning, day 4 on this Cortina. I've prepped up the insides of the bonnet and boot, and this is some Pour 15 that we were doing a chassis with. So it's perfect for any rusted areas, and there was a bit of rust around some of these channels, so I just thought while it was out I'd put a bit of that on, and I prepped up the inside of the bonnet and just put a bit of seam sealer around the edge. It had some sort of stone guard or something like that sprayed all over it, so I didn't bother sanding it all back flat. I just gave it a quick scuff back, and we'll just give it a nice shiny coat of paint again. I'll be giving this a sand back and redoing the sealer as well before I paint that. But I'll give you guys a look at the car, which is in here. So ready for me to start masking up. Been a big 3 days to get it to where it is. It's not going to be ripple free, but there will be a couple of bits that I need to redo. I'm aware of that, but I'll just get a good 4 coats over it. So I'll probably put the first coat over just any of the cut through areas and the repairs and that, and then I'll put a good 3 coats over the entire thing, because there was a few slight ripples, like nothing major, nothing that was actually worth filling over the entire panels. But by the time I get some good 2-pack primer that's easy to sand on it, I'll be able to improve them. Decided I'll just be getting the primer on and then leaving it for sort of as long as possible, even a week. We've got a bit of other work on at the moment, so the longer you sort of leave that primer, the more it shrinks back. And primer's always going to shrink back if you're going over this kind of thing. But what you want is for it to do the shrinking before you start painting. So even prime it up, whack it out in the sun. Looks like we've got a few warm days coming up. Put it out in the sun and give it a good bake out. Need be, I could put my infrared lights on it, but we've got time. So if I was in a real rush to do it, I could just get the infrared lights, say put 10 minutes per panel down the entire side, and you can even get them up onto the roof, and then we'd be right to start sanding. Next up, I gave the entire car a edge mask. However, I did skip the footage out of that. Sometimes I do get enough footage without including some of those longer stints. But anyway, you can see what I've done. Just gone around all the edges, done the back masking, and next up will be throwing the piece of plastic over it. You can see I've set my bonnet and boot lid up. The boot lid needs the primer on the inside, as I mentioned before. So I decided it's going to save a bit of time just by hanging it up, doing the inside and outside with the primer at the same time. and then get the entire car primed without having to go in there twice, clean the gun out twice, and have an extra spray cycle in my spray booth. I'm always looking at ways of making the job quicker and more efficient without cutting corners and making for an average job. So as you may have noticed, the masking plastic I'm using is from Park Automotive. I think it just gets rebranded for them. They don't actually manufacture this plastic themselves. They just get their label put on it by the guys that do make it. It's not the best plastic I've used, but it does the job. All I've got to be careful of is when I'm pulling it over the car is it doesn't rip. It'll sort of like split the entire way down the roll of plastic, and then you'll end up having little spots where you've got to tape up. So I'm just obviously taking a little bit of care when I'm doing this stage here. Once you've done that stage and you've got to open up, you're pretty right with it. But I do recommend looking out for the crocodile skin. If you can get your hands on some of that, it's all reasonably priced these days. You'll get a box or a full roll of this for $20, like maximum $25. So it's really dirt cheap, and it's not even worth stuffing around with. Some panel shops, they still keep old pieces of plastic and reuse them. Look, to be honest, it's that cheap, it's not even worth doing anymore. And this is me paying for the materials as well, especially when we don't really do much work in the paint work in the workshop anyway. It's really not necessary for us to start reusing bits of plastic. I mean, we'll get 5 at a time, 5 boxes for $100, and that will last us well over 3 months. I think we've been there for a year and only ever had to order it 2 or 3 times. And a lot of that was going up to the airport when we were spraying aircraft up there. Anyway, the masking tape I like to use is the 3M as well. I like to use the best quality products when possible. Obviously, you've got to strike the balance between quality and price. So sometimes you do use a bit of a cheaper product and sometimes they work. Sometimes they don't and they're just absolute garbage. But at the end of the day, that's down to you as the technician to find what does and doesn't work for you. Trial and error is what you're going to have to be doing, really. It was like when we moved into this workshop here, we needed a affordable paint system because it just seemed that everyone that was coming into us just wanted the cheapest paint out. They didn't care. They just wanted, you know, what's the cheapest price I can get this thing resprayed for? And they'd want resprays for $2,000 or $3,000. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be spending $2,000 on materials and then an extra $1,000 on the workshop, well, there's not really much left over for me. You're just getting by. You're not really getting ahead in leaps and bounds unless you work harder and smarter. Some people say work smarter, not harder. I say work smarter and harder, and that is the recipe for success. Be better than the next guy. Be willing to do what the next guy is not willing to do, and you will be the best at what you do. But anyway, we did look into getting the concept paint system, which I will be reviewing soon. There's definitely a few plus points to it. It's dirt cheap and the quality of it seems just fine. I have found some of the metallics aren't really that good, but for a budget job, it's ideal. So got her all masked up, about to get some primer on it. Pretty happy with all the masking. I put a bit of cardboard in between here because the door gap and the guard gap here is absolutely massive, and I would have just covered all that with primer. But apart from that, got all the sills masked up, all the wheel arches and all these little holes up the front. I decided to hang the boot lid because I wanted to put a couple of coats of just 2K primer over this that Pour 15 that I put there. It's sort of a little bit hard to sand, and there's still a few little grinding marks from where I ground it back. So probably just put like 2 or 3 coats over that, should do it. So I'll probably end up using a full primer kit. I won't be surprised if I go through that, which is still just about full. I've got a backup there if I need it though. Just the Concept Paints HS primer. I like this stuff. It's got a good feel to it, and it's good to sand as well. And I'll be using the Gunza AZ3 1.8mm. Good little gun for primer, that one. It's been going pretty hard for over a year and hasn't missed a beat. So I'll be leaving it there for this video. Make sure you tune in for the next part and we'll be picking up exactly where we left off. This is a quick look at the car as where it is up to at the moment. make sure you do go and check out my website, thegunman.net.au. I've also got links to all my social media in the description of this video below. I've actually just been doing a big upgrade on my website, and I've been putting all of my videos in different categories and doing blogs, and yeah, it's been a bit of fun for me, but it is very time consuming, so show your appreciation by just ducking over there to thegunman.net.au. Hope you have enjoyed watching this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Now you've seen this video, get out there and paint some shit. Thanks for watching, and this has been another Gunman production. Goodbye.